Hey everyone, Shane here with eTrailer.com. Today I have a 2021 Grand Design Reflection fifth wheel, and I'm going to walk through how to install the Solera 15-foot 7-inch slide topper. Slide toppers, in my opinion, are a must if you have a camper without one. The reason is if we didn't have one, we go to slide our box out. The top of our box is open. When it's open, it can collect debris. Maybe we go to a park that has a lot of trees, a lot of leaves, sticks, stuff like that. You have to get up there and clean that off every single time. And over time, you're gonna have to wash that. If you don't, it's gonna mold, mildew. When you go to slide your box in, the top of that roof is now inside the camper. When it's inside the camper, now all that mold, dirt, debris, everything else is inside. It's gonna cause issues. It can cause mold on the inside. It may cost you a lot of money later on. So adding a slide topper, in my opinion, is an absolute must for any slide out box that you have on your camper. Another reason why I highly recommend slide toppers. We go to a campsite, again, as I mentioned earlier, it has sticks or a lot of trees. You got sticks, leaves, debris, stuff like that. You don't get up here and clean it off. What happens is the leaves will bunch up against this T-molding, especially if they're wet. They'll bunch up against this T-molding. As you close your slide out, and it goes up against this rubber seal, if you don't clean those leaves out, it's going to leave a gap. If it rains, water's going to get inside there. You have your slide out inside, all that water is going to go inside your camper. It's going to cause a lot of other issues that you otherwise wouldn't have if you had a slide topper on. Now, a couple of important things to keep in mind when you go to choose your canopy, and that's the size you would need. For a box that doesn't have anything on the sides, it's open, what you're going to do is you're going to measure from the outer edge of your T-molding on one end to the outer edge of the T-molding on the other. That's the number you want to go with. Check the fit guide, pick the canopy that fits your slide out. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind. For instance, if we have a box like this and we have another box next to it, we need at least 7 inches from here out and 7 inches from this box out in order to get the correct size canopy for this, or slide topper. If we don't have 14 inches between those two T-moldings, then you're gonna have to go down one size on one of the boxes. Now let's say I had a camper where this was on the opposite side. It was right up against the door, and next to the door was the awning rail. This was sitting so close to it, there was not 7 inches of space to that awning rail that we cannot put the correct size topper on that box, so we had to go down one size. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the size. Make sure you have 7 inches from this edge out, or if you have another box, 14 inches in between those two boxes if you're going to put one on each of them. If you don't, one of them is going to have to go down one size. Other than that, the installation is very simple on them. I highly recommend slide toppers on your box. Again, as I mentioned, top of your box is open when it's out. But with the topper that fits the size of your slide out, you can see it's going to overhang this. So now if we go somewhere where we have trees, leaves, sticks, even rain, we don't have to worry about anything sitting on top of our box. We don't have to worry about cleaning it off anymore. Once we're done, we can roll our slide out in. Canopy is going to roll up right with it. Fabric is going to be a durable vinyl fabric. It's going to hold up in all weather conditions. Canopies are going to come in black or white with matching hardware. You can find many different sizes here at eTrailer. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let's walk through how to get it installed. First thing you need to do is you need to determine if you have an extrusion rail. Now, an extrusion rail can be confused with just a gutter. An extrusion rail is going to have this piece in it right here. It's basically a half moon shaped that allows the bead for the awning or the slide topper to slide inside of it. If it doesn't have that and it's just the gutter, it's going to have to come off. Your kit's going to come with a new extrusion rail. You're going to need butyl tape, and it's going to come with all the screws, and go ahead and put that in. And how you're going to do that is you're going to measure from here up 3 inches, and that's going to be the edge of your extrusion rail. Since we already have the extrusion rail, we're going to go ahead and move on to installing the brackets on the sidewall. In your kit, we're going to start with these two brackets here. You're going to take butyl tape, and we're going to go on the bottom of it. You can see this will be the top or the outside. This is going to be the side that's going against the camper wall. We're going to take our butyl tape, we're going to put 2 pieces on. What we want to do is we want to cover these screw holes. And what I like to do is kind of fold the paper up on the edge. So when I put my second piece on, I can kind of overlap them, and that way there's not a gap between the two. We don't have to worry about water getting in there. Just kind of squish these two together. And then we'll repeat that same thing for this one. We're going to have 2 different kinds of screws in our kit. These with the round head are going to be for your extrusion rail. So if we're not putting it in, we're not going to need those. You're going to have flat head square bit screws. We're going to need 5 of those for each of the bracket, and then a square bit. Now if you'll notice on this bracket, you're going to have a flat edge here, and this side is going to be curved or at an angle. We want this angled side to be facing down. So we're going to take it, we're going to go up against our top T molding and over in the corner as far as we can go. Make sure if you have any dirt or anything on here, you wipe it off. With the butyl tape, once you get it on, it'll hold there while you put the screws in. So what the butyl tape is for is when we drive this screw into the wall, it's going to grab on, the threads are going to grab on some of that butyl tape and kind of pull it into the hole and help seal that. Once you get all your screws in, we can come back. You can take a utility knife, and we're going to trim off this extra butyl tape. Now you don't want to push all the way in. All you have to do is really score this. We don't have to push up against the actual camper because we don't want to scratch it. Then we're going to repeat the process on the opposite end of your slide out. Again, make sure the curved edge is facing down, this flat edge all the way up against and all the way in the corner. Next, we're going to take one of our rods. On one end, it's going to have a hole. On the end arm, it's going to have a hole. We're going to slide it in. We're going to line up these 2 holes. You're going to have a cap. It's going to have a notch cut out of it. We're going to line that up with the hole. And you're going to have a self-tapper like this. Phillips head. And we don't need to drive it down in there to where it's flat. We just want to put it down in there so it's tight. If it goes flat like that, great. And then what I like to do, and this is completely up to you, is you can take a paint marker and you can paint this hardware so it matches the rest of it. We're going to repeat that same thing on the opposite end. So before we slide our canopy in place, this part of our gutter right here in this corner is going to have to be cut off, because what it's doing is it's covering the extrusion rail, and our canopy is going to come straight out from that. I'm just going to use some side cutters. Make sure you cut it enough that when your canopy is on there, it's not going to damage the canopy itself or the material. And we're going to do the same thing on the other end. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to grab a couple extra people. This is a pretty long one, so I'd say probably 3 or 4 at least. We want to unroll it 1 turn. That way when we go to slide it into the extrusion rail, our canopy is not so tight that it makes it too difficult to work with. With it being loose like this, once we take our clips out and the spring tightens up, all this will tighten up later on. So now with our extra set of hands, you want to make sure that this part is facing out. We're going to take this bead and we're going to slide it right into that extrusion rail, or into that groove. If you need to, you can spray some soapy water in there or some kind of lubricant, make it slide a little bit easier. This is a pretty new camper, so there's not a bunch of gunk or anything in it. So next we're going to get a second person down at the other end. We're going to have two brackets like this. We're going to make sure that this is at the top. On the back of this bracket, you're going to notice there's 4 slots. One is to bring this roller down more, and one is to raise it up. We're going to go ahead and put it on the top 2, which is going to bring our roller down. And what we're going to look at is when we slide the box out, if the top of our canopy is touching the top of the T-molding, that gives us the option to take that bracket and move it up so it doesn't rub a hole in the top of our canopy on the inside. Next, you're going to need an Allen wrench. And you're going to have 4 small bolts like this. They're going to have thread locker on them. On this plate, you want to make sure it's even on both sides. You're going to have 4 holes. Whichever 2 slots you put it in, whether the lower ones or upper ones, you're going to put it in those 2 holes. We're using the top 2 slots, so we're going to be putting it in the top 2 holes here. These are going to keep this bracket straight or level on this, and to keep it from sliding. Once we get one end done, we'll repeat it on the other side. Next thing you need to do is the edge of your canopy right here. We need to get an even amount from this edge to the edge of our T-molding on both ends. So just kind of try to center it inside your box. And you're going to have 4 self-tappers like this. They're going to go through here into this rail. What you want to do is you want to take this and kind of roll it back like that. Now I will say, don't just take these and drive them in, because if you heat that up too much, that self-tapper is going to break off. So kind of feather it in until it starts, and then you can drive it in the rest of the way. And then we can do the same thing here. If you decide to do this, the paint marker, you can paint those bolts so it matches everything else. Once you get one side done, you're going to repeat that on the other side. Next thing we're going to do, on each end, you're going to have a clip here. We're going to take our roller, kind of spin it towards the camper, and we're going to pull it out like that. You want to make sure you hold on to these, so if you go to take this down for any reason, you can put this clip back in and it keeps the tension on the spring inside. Put it back in, you're just going to do the opposite of taking it out. You're going to look inside this hole. There's a rod that runs in there that has a hole in it. You're going to spin it until you see that hole, and you pop that clip back into place. You want to make sure if you're doing that, you put one on each end. We'll go ahead and pull this one out and one on the opposite end, and our canopy will tighten up, and then we can roll our box out, test it out, make sure everything's working right. Now that we have our clips out, what we're going to do is we're going to take our box, we're going to slide it out, all the way out, and then we want to bring it back in. What that's doing is that's allowing the bead that's in that extrusion rail to adjust, because what we don't want is as when we roll it in, for it to curl. We don't want to see curls in it. So once we pull it out, pull it back in, that'll allow us to do some minor adjustments, and then we'll have 2 screws that we're going to drive in from the bottom of the extrusion rail into that bead to keep that from moving around. These are the wrinkles that I was talking about. You can see a few of them. What it's doing is the bead that's in the extrusion rail is actually pulling the canopy that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the box out just a little bit. I'm going to take my roller take the pressure off it. I'm going to slide the bead that's in the extrusion rail that way just a little, or towards the back of the camper. And we'll see if we can't get those out. The reason we want to adjust this while the box is in is because if it's all the way out, we're not going to see any of those wrinkles until it's in. So I rolled it out just a little bit, maybe about that much. We just want to work it until we get those wrinkles out of there. You're going to have a little bitty self-tapper like this. It's black. You're going to have two of them. You're going to have one for each end. Where these are going to go is you can go the top of this extrusion rail down through the bead, or you can go through the bottom up. I like to go through the bottom. It keeps the weather off it, keeps it from rusting, lasts a little bit longer. You want to go in about an inch from the outer edge of our material. Once you get your two screws in your extrusion rail, you're ready to go. It's going to do it for a look at in installation on the Solera 15-foot 7-inch slide topper on a 2021 Grand Design Reflection fifth wheel.